All right, it's recording.
Okay. Maybe I'll give another one more minute or so. We had about 40 folks, a little over 40 people register. I'm just gonna give it another minute or two for people to join. How's everyone today? Can you hear me okay? I hope. Right. Why don't we go ahead and get started? I want to keep everybody all day. So good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us for this session on adding and creating and managing news. I'm Andy Smith. I'm a member of the Trinity web support team. Also on the call with me is Haley Warren, the Director of Digital Strategy in Trinity Communications, and Marie Claire Shalani, who is the editorial director and primary science writer for Trinity Communications. And just to, I thought I'd go ahead and make this note. Haley, who's on the call here, who has been instrumental, who really was the mastermind behind these training sessions that we've started doing. Um, this will be the last training session Haley will be joining us for because she is going to be moving on to a new adventure, and we are sorely going to miss her. But I wanted to go and throw that out there just for those of you who were not aware. Um, So yeah, today we're going to be talking about news, how news gets added and to your website, and how to manage the news on your site. We'll go over a few tips for writing your own news articles and where to go for help when you have questions. We're going to spend a fair amount of time working through some demonstrations that will include adding a news article, linking that news article to an external source, such as the Chronicle or New York Times. We're going to look at the purpose of the media library. We'll look at categorizing news articles, updating the news that appears on your front page, and then we'll also take a look at using the manage news page as part of those demonstrations. We'll plan to leave some time for questions at the end of the hour, but please drop any questions that you have in the chat while we're working through this. And if there's a good place for us to pause for a moment and ask and answer some of those questions, we'll try to do so as we can. All right, so first of all, it's important to note that the news that you see on your website can be generated in one of two ways. It can either be imported, typically from Duke Today, or it can be created directly on your website by an editor with sufficient privileges. In either case, what a site visitor sees is the same. Whether it's an imported article or it's an article that one of your editors has created, the end user, the visitor to your site is not going to know the difference. They appear the same way. The news that originates on Duke Today is technically it's first imported to Trinity, to the main trinity.duke.edu website, where a member of the communications team evaluates, possibly makes some edits, and then tags that story for distribution to one or more department websites. Those articles that are then imported to your site, they can't be edited by your site editors, and it will inherit any updates that are made upstream. In other words, if Trinity goes in and makes an additional change to that story, that change would then be imported to your site. There are some fields on the external on those stories that are imported that are not impacted by the import process, which can be used to modify those imported articles, primarily categorization, which we'll get to when we look at the demonstrations. So yeah, let's go through a few demos. Like I said, we're going to look at creating an article, selecting an image from the media library, linking a news article to an external source, categorizing that news article, and modifying which articles appear on the front page of your site. And then finally, we'll take a look at the Manage News page, which is a page available to logged in editors, that's intended to facilitate many of these tasks that we'll go over. So I'm going to switch to our demo site. And I kind of blew through this the other day, the logging in process. But when you need to log into your site, if you scroll down to the bottom of any page that you're on, you'll see this NetID login button. So if I click that, I will be prompted to log in. I'm going to use one of our test accounts. And once I log in, you'll see I've got this administration toolbar. If I click manage, I'll get this shortcut toolbar. I see an edit tab. I've got some other little icons that appear on the screen when I'm logged in. But what we are going to do is work on adding a news article. So it's important to note that when I want to add a news article, I don't go to the news page and click edit. Um, this is, this is the page where all the news articles from the newest to the oldest are going to be listed on your site. To actually add a news article, I'm not going to edit this page, but rather I'm going to select content, add content, and select news article local. That's the content type that is used to create news articles. It's got the fields that you'll need to add a news article. It's different from a different content type that has a different purpose. But when I click that link, it brings up the news article local, create a news article local editing interface. Note here we have this little instructions block where we've got a link directly to our documentation site where it talks about how to create a news article. I'm just going to minimize that for now because I feel confident that I can create an article without reading the documentation. So I'm just going to enter in a headline for the article. There's a byline field which you don't have to use, but I'm going to go and put in I like to take credit for my work. You can enter in a published date. It defaults to the current day, but you can change that. If this is an older story, you can change that. We'll look at the category and research fields in a moment, but first I want to look at some of these additional options on the news article local page form. So here's where I access the media library. I can select one of the existing images that have been added to the library. If some of you are here in February, this is one of the images that I added at the time. You can do a search for if you know the media name. So a typical use case for the media library is if you know you're going to be having lots of stories about a particular person or a particular thing, and you could add that image to your media library and by searching for the name of that media item in the future, you'll be able to find that item without having to add it again. For this particular story, I'm going to go ahead and just add a new image just to walk through that process. So I'm going to click add a new image. I'm going to say this is Archie undergrad. That's just the name of the person I'm making up for this demo. I'm going to find that image on my file system. I'm going to choose Archie here. And I need to provide alternative text. That's the text that screen readers use for people who are low or no vision. Archie undergrad. And I don't need to give a description, so I'm just going to go and click save. And now you can see for this article that I'm creating, I've got my main image selected. I'm ready to go. Now I just need to, if I wanted to, I could give a caption. I'm not going to for this particular demonstration. We do have some image options here. Float right is the default. I'll show you what that means in a second. But wait, I could have this image either floated to the right, which is the default. I could have it displayed as a wide image at the top of the article, or I could just hide it all together if I don't want this particular image to show when a user is viewing the article. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste in some placeholder text for my article. And at this point, I'm ready to go. I've got my headline, I've got my published date, I've got my image, I've got the main article. And now when I click save, we'll see what that article looks like. Here's the headline that I gave it. Here's my byline. Here's that published date defaulted to today. Here's the image floated to the right. You can see that with that. Now, if I were to switch that to wide, it would just be displayed above the title of the article. And now if I go to my news page, we'll see, lo and behold, here is that story that I just added as the latest, as the newest one there on my news page. So let's real quickly look at an instance where, well, I know this story about Archie is actually on the Duke Chronicle website. So rather than recreating that entire story here, I just want to have both of these links and the read more link, or really wherever this news article appears on my website. I want it to go off to that external source, to the Duke Chronicle story for this. So some of you, while I was creating this news article, you may have noticed at the bottom of that form, there was an external article field. So what I'm going to do is just paste in this is not Archie's story, by the way. I just grabbed a random random story from the Duke Chronicle. But I'm populating that external article field with this Chronicle web address. And now when I click save, I go back to my news page. And now if I click on either the headline or the thumbnail or the read more link, I'm actually going to jump off to the Duke Chronicle website. Does that make sense to folks? All right, so now we're going to look at categorizing this news article. We're going to, this is an undergrad story. So let's say we want to make this.
Hi, Andy.
Hey.
That's a quick question. Can you go back to the page that you showed where you linked that actual article? Just want to.
Sure. Yeah, I kind of glossed over that. So to get to that, I clicked this edit this article link underneath the little summary. So I just, by clicking that, I went to this, it looks very similar to this. It is basically the same form that I used when I created this particular article, but it's already populated with this story that I created.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I need to make if I need to make any kind of edit to this story, I could click that edit button to take out this paragraph, or maybe put in a different image, or to add a caption to that story, or to change the way that image is displayed to wide or hidden. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, if you can scroll down to the bottom of that.
Sure.
Yeah, right there, external article. That's it.
Yep. Sorry. I think I spoke to everything except what you were actually asking.
You're awesome. Thank you, Andy.
Okay. All right. So while we're in here, actually, let me go back. So here I am on my news page. This is an undergrad story. I will just point out within the quote unquote undergraduate section of this demo site, I've got a place where I show undergraduate news, right? So I just got some sample images entered in here. It's a little carousel. It can house up to 12 articles, I think. 3 screens of 4 articles each. So if I wanted to add that latest news article that I created, because hey, this is about Archie undergrad and he won this prestigious award. Let's say I want to have this story show up among those stories within that undergraduate carousel. I would again click edit this article, and within the category, I would choose undergraduate. Now, these categories are controllable by site editors. This is a little bit beyond the scope of what we're going to be talking about today. We probably will have another session, I think, on taxonomy and how that's used and how that comes into play. But by selecting undergraduate as a category, when I click save now, didn't change anything about the article that I'm seeing here. But if I go to my undergraduate section, we'll see, oh, there's that Archie undergrad story. And again, this now links, because I added that external article, this instance, this little thumbnail and headline, that also links off to the Duke Chronicle story, just like it did from the news page. You may have noticed that in addition to category, we have a similar field where I think I scrolled right by it, called research areas. This is similar to category, it's just a different type of categorization. So for sites that have a research section, and maybe if you're doing research on uh, whatever the different research areas are that your department works with, you might have a research area for that you could choose from for each of those research areas. And then within the research section, you could have targeted news specific to this research area or that research area. So it's just another way of categorization, essentially.
Can I
So
add something to the categories real quick, Andy? I'm sorry.
yes, no, that's great.
Yeah, if I don't think this is something we've discussed before, but if you've ever seen the related stories bar at the bottom of one of your stories and wondered how those get there by the different categories that you add. And so if you tag this as undergraduate and you have a lot of stories tagged as undergraduate on your site, this one is pointing externally, but if it were just on the site without the external article, you would have a related stories bar at the bottom. I don't know if we have an example
That's
on
a
here
great
of
that's a
that, but
that's a great point. What I'll do is I can remove this external article link for now and then save that. And if we go back and look at so now I've removed external article, it doesn't link off to the Chronicle anymore. If I click on this, I go directly to that story, and at the bottom of the page here, we see related articles. And these are other stories, the latest 4 stories that share that same category, if that makes sense. Thank you, Haley, for
yeah,
pointing that
yeah, of
out.
course. So if you've ever wondered how those get there, that's how it's via the categories.
Yep. All right, so let's look at the front page again and notice how I've got this little section here where I show news and I show events, and now I've got this new article that I want to have show up on the front page of my website. So the way we do that is not through categorization. It's not through editing that individual news article, but it's through a a Drupal concept known as an entity queue. So I'm going to go to Structure Entity Queues, and I'm going to look for my front page news queue. We can see there's 5 items in the queue, but there's only 4 items showing on that front page. And that's because right now, this site is only configured to show 4 items. So if I look at the edit items, if I edit the items for this particular queue, I'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see a first-year student, Marguerite Nguyen, 8 Trinity College Arts and Sciences faculty, an article without a main image, and then this fifth one here that just doesn't even show on the front page. If I go back to the front page, if I go back to the front page, if I go back to the front page, Little demo hiccup. Sorry about that. See here. So here, the first four images in that queue that we were looking at: a first-year student, Marguerite McGinn, Trinity College of Arts and Sciences faculty, and then an article without a main image. So what I want to do is add this new story because this is a brand new thing. It's really fresh. I want to make sure this is on the front page of my website. I would go to Entity Queues. I'd edit the items that are in that front page news. And now I just need to start typing the name of that article that I want to have appear on that front page. And when I click Add Item, it's going to default to the last item in the queue. But what I can do is click and drag it to be in the first position of that queue. So now at this point, notice I've got 6 items in the queue. I could remove these other 2 since I know my front page is only showing 4. I'm not going to worry with that right this moment. And when I click Save, we'll see now that front page news now has 6 items. It has got the 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I go back to the front page of my site, we'll see now that I've got the Archie story, I've got the first year. So everything else just sort of got knocked one position down the chain. And again, if I click on this, I'm going directly to the store since I removed that Chronicle URL. Let's see. So the last thing that I want to take a quick look at, and then maybe we can take a few questions, is within the shortcuts menu. We've got several items here. I'm just going to quickly look at the Manage News page, which is something that you will have access to when you're logged into your site. If I click Manage News, I go to a view where I see a table of all the different news stories on the site. I can do a search for a news article. So I can do a search for Archie. That's the story I'm trying to look with. I can say, well, let me show me everything that's categorized as undergraduate. And I can, yeah, so here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or so stories that are tagged undergraduate. Um, we can see on at least one story here, this is an imported story that has a title override. So a common use case here is if you get a story that's been imported to your site and it says 5 Trinity faculty named professors of the year, whatever the case may be. And that story is now on your site. So you want to call out the fact that, Joe faculty in your department is one of these award recipients. So you can edit that imported article and using the local data. Here's all the imported data. You can't change any of this because this gets imported from upstream. But I can go in here and I can change the title override. I can also then, if this happened to be an undergraduate story, I could tag it as an undergraduate story. If it was related to any kind of research area, I could do the same thing there. Let's see what else about the managed news. There's some other things here. You can see, okay, this is a local story, meaning locally created on this site. This is an imported story. Shows you the author, the byline for those stories. It shows you the published date. It tells you whether or not there's an image associated with that article. It'll also show you if the story if the story here is in that entity queue that we looked at. So yeah, that Archie story, it is in the queue because I just added it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 6 items here that are in that queue. So that's, yeah. Then the external column will let you know whether or not there is a external URL in that external article field. So for example, we can look at this Esther Kim Lee story for which I've given a title override. If I look at the imported data, I'll be able to see that, yeah, the external article, it links off to an AP News story. Again, I can't change this because this was imported from outside of this site. But I can at least look to see, well, where's this story going? Or you can just also click on the link. But anyway, then there are also you can edit from this. Once you've found the story that you are wanting to work with, you can click the edit tab to make whatever changes that you want to make. You can add additional categories, you can change the pub date, what have you. So I kind of flew through a lot. Are there any questions before we move on to another topic?
Dorothy has a question in the chat asking if there's a difference between using the Entity Q link directly from the news article or going to the structure link.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh, sorry. Is
Yeah.
there a difference in procedures on how you get to the Entity Q, or is it okay to go anyway? So from directly from the article or versus going through structure?
I see. I think I understand. So if I look at the managed news page, I can see that this story, for example, is in that entity queue, but you can't get to the entity queue from this interface or from the editing interface of these stories. You do have to go through structure entity queues to get to the management. But that brings up something we discussed yesterday when we were going through, or on Monday when we were going through a dry run. One thing to note that we introduced relatively recently, it was within the last, I don't know, couple of months. It's all a blur. Um, right now, on this particular site, and I would say the vast majority of the sites that we support, the front page news is controlled by that entity queue that we've just looked at. We have introduced, again, relatively recently, an option that's specifically for front page use cases like this that shows the four most recent articles, not the four or the ones from the entity queue. So that is a good option for site owners, site stakeholders who don't anticipate having a lot of time to manually curate and work with, update what shows up on your front page. It's an option that, basically just whenever anything new comes into your site, it's going to show up on the front page of your site. So a little less control, but less maintenance. So if that is something that you think you'd be interested in, that's something that either Trinity Communications or the Trinity Web Support folks can help um,
I,
swap that out.
I will note to Dorothy's question, Andy, I think you can actually get to the Entity Q from the news article. If you click on that one, there is
Sorry, let me click
on
on
one
that
of,
one.
yeah, so you can
Oh,
select the Entity Q menu from right there.
well, there you go.
It's a few extra clicks, but it takes you to the same place ultimately. So um,
Thank you, Haley. Thank you,
it's
Dorothy.
okay.
You can see I'm not editing content fairly frequently. That's a great point, though. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, there's
Um,
this happens with a few other things as well, where there's multiple ways to get to the spot. So sometimes you can, like Andy was showing, you can edit from the managed news spot. You can edit directly from. So there's lots of different ways sometimes to get to places, but it takes you to the same backend spot.
yeah. Let's see. So I'm I'm just going to throw this out there. We don't want editors banging their heads on stuff like this. So if you're running into issues and you can't remember how do I get to the entity queue or how do I add an external article, we are, there's always the documentation which will explain a lot of those things, and you can see that documentation when if you're editing an article, you'll see that link to this creating a news article, editing a news article. But always reach out to Trinity Web Support if you have questions or you can't remember how to do something. Um, so at this point, I'm going to hand the mic, as it were, over to Marie Claire Shalini so she can give us talk to us a little bit about things to consider when writing news articles.
Thank you, Andy. So we have a few things that we take into consideration whenever we are writing a story for the website. And one of the things that we encourage you to do, because you are closer to the ground and you might hear news and good news in particular sooner than we do, is if you want to write about an award that a faculty received or something special that a graduate student did, we encourage you to do so. And we're here to offer all of our help and our support so that whatever you put on the website looks good and it easy to understand for anyone. So a few of the things that we take into consideration, the most frequent case that we have are probably going to be faculty and graduate student awards. And those, we can write something that is a very simple formula. Professor so-and-so won this award. This award recognizes their work in this area. This award has been given since 1974, and this year was given to 7 people. Something like that, something that just states what happened, gives a little bit of context about the faculty and why they got that, and gives a little bit of context about what the award is, how long has it been given, how prestigious it is in the field. Sometimes department chairs contribute a quote to that to just say how proud they are of their faculty, or the faculty themselves might want to say a little bit about their what that award means for them. So sometimes it's worth asking the faculty or the chair if they want to contribute something to the article. And remember that ideally we want as many people as possible to read that, so to keep it as free of jargon as possible. Sometimes I find if I want to add a little bit of information on a faculty member's research, I try to see their lab website, or even their scholars at Google, their scholars at Duke page will often have a little description of their research. And those are often relatively jargon-free and good to be used in articles like that. We recommend that you always link the faculty member's name to their scholars profile, so that if someone wants to learn more about them, they can go from there easily to their profile. And also link the department name. So if you're saying Professor of Physics Stefan Bass got this award, you would highlight Stefan Bass and hyperlink that to his scholars profile, and you would hyperlink physics to your department, in this case, the physics department. And that will also allow people to, if they see that article from the Trinity website or from a newsletter, to find their way back to your department easily. We ask that if you are including a photo on your article, which please do, if you don't have a good headshot of the faculty or of the award itself or some other photo that could be representative, we can point you towards a few very pretty Duke stock photos that can sometimes illustrate an article. We ask that you please add a caption and a credit. And the caption can be as simple as Stefan Bass, and the credit courtesy from scholars at Duke. I'm going to keep using Stefan as an example. But you can also have, if it is something about a classroom activity, you can mention the name of that class or who is the faculty giving it, and try to find who took that photo and give credit to them. But we ask that you don't leave photos without a caption. They are, because they just don't look that great, and your information is missing from that. Andy, can you pass to the next one, please?
Yep.
We do have a few things that we try to keep consistent in terms of style. One of them is for our headlines. We capitalize all major words, even if they are very short, like is, we do capitalize that, and all prepositions that are longer than 3 letters. So, for example, above. So D is something we'll probably not capitalize in a sentence. A, articles, things like that, we would not capitalize. Everything else we do. In general, we follow the Associated Press style guide. The style book itself it's a it's a subscription, but you can find a lot of information about it. And very conveniently, that is also what Duke follows. And Duke has a fairly comprehensive language guide on that we can easily find online, and it has answers to a lot of questions from how do I include the faculty's title in the article, all the way to should I use freshmen or first years? Their language guide is quite comprehensive and very good to use. We also have our own resources. They are not currently publicly available. They are a box note, if I'm being completely candid and honest with you all. But if you would like, if you start to get into the habit of writing more content for your website, please reach out to me or reach out to trinitycoms@duke.edu, and we can share that with you. We can give you more resources so that you can make sure that the articles that you write are all formatted the same ways that ours would be, that they follow the same style, and that they look very consistent across all the pages of your website. So when in doubt, just ask us questions. One big thing that is sometimes a style guide that is counterintuitive. Because we follow the Associate Press style guide, we don't use Dr. this or Professor that. We state on the first time that we mention that faculty's name, Professor of, let's say, physics, to continue with the same example, Stefan Bass, but then we don't refer to Stefan as Professor Bass or Dr. Bass. It will just be Bass for the rest of the article. That is sometimes, it's something that I personally don't like. I think people who have a PhD, let's call them doctors, but it is the recommendation from Associates Press. Sometimes faculty will push back a little bit on that and will ask that you include the doctor. It is not a hill that we will die on. So if your faculty would like to be called doctor, you know what, call them doctor, they deserve it. It's completely fine. But typically we don't do that in our stories. That's the other, I had forgotten to add that to the slide, but that's the capitalization of the headlines, and the doctor and professor are two things that we often catch. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, please let me know. Reach out either to me or to the trinitycoms@duke.edu, and we're more than happy to share all the resources that we have with you all.
That's great. Thank you, Marie Claire. So speaking of that, I'm going to talk a little bit. We covered this last time, but we just want to make sure that folks are understanding, that help is available. We're here to help. And just want to give a few examples about when when is a good time to reach out to the Trinity Comms folks, and what are the sort of things where you should get in touch with the web support folks. So, for example, if you're asked to write a news article about an important accomplishment by a member of your department, but you're just not sure where to start with, how do I get this? What's the best way to get started with this, writing this actual article? Trinity Communications is going to be best suited to ask. If you want to, if the example we looked at today, where on the demo site we've got the undergraduate news that's been categorized as undergraduate news within that section of the website. That is something that comms can help with. That is also something that the web support folks can help with. But I think oftentimes comms might be an appropriate first line of defense in a question like that, just so they can they can answer some questions about, well, how much undergraduate news do you actually have? Is this something you're going to start? Is there going to be the same 3 stories up there for 2 years or 6 months? Maybe they can help you think through maybe what are some other ways. Maybe we need to categorize other news to be shown in that section. If you see a story on Duke Today that is specifically related to, directly related to your department, but you're not seeing that story on your site, that's a good idea to reach out to the comms folks so they can work with the folks to get that site imported to Trinity. Then they can then do the curation that they do and then get it fed out to your website. So some examples of when you would want to reach out to the web support folks. Well, in addition to maybe having adding categorized news to a specific section of your website, if you're if that editing interface isn't behaving as expected, or you've gone into the documentation and you want that image to be hidden when you view the news article, or you want it to use the wide display and it's just not working, or you can't select it, or it's not changing, that would be an opportunity to reach out to the web support folks so we can figure out what's going on there. If you're logged into the site, so you can add a news story and you go to content, add content, and you just don't see um, that option to add a news article, that would be something that the web support folks could look at and help you figure out why what's going on there. And then, just at the risk of stating the obvious, if the you want to get in touch with the web support with my team, if the website isn't responding at all, you go to your web address, you bring it up in the browser, and you see nothing but a white screen, maybe a message that just says this website has encountered an unexpected error. Always start with web support on those sort of. Hopefully that you won't run across that, because if you're running across it, chances are everyone who we support is running across a similar issue. But that is one example. And if you're unsure, always start with the web support folks, Trinity Web Support at duke.edu. And if it's something that requires, if there's a content or content strategy aspect to that request or that question, we'll certainly pull in the comms team, and vice versa. We partner very closely with the comms folks. So if you reach out to the communications team and there's a technical or some kind of functional change that needs to happen to address what you're trying to do, they'll pull in a member of our team so we can help figure out the best way to provide what you need. So, in conclusion, news can be either imported or created directly on your website by an editor. We looked at a couple of those examples. The imported news, once it's on your site, it can't be edited with the exception of those the fields that are used for categorizing or overwriting the title. Always use the Manage News page to find and work with the news, both imported and locally generated. And lastly, Trinity Web Support at duke.edu and Trinity Comms at duke.edu are the two resources available to you as website editors to help figure out, what's the next step when you're trying to add news to your site and you're having questions. So with that, I will open the floor to other questions. If anyone has some additional, if there's anything we haven't covered, or if there's something that I just blew through too quickly. And also, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Can I add one more thing that I forgot to mention?
Sure.
If you already wrote something or would like to write something, and before clicking publish, you want to run it by us, that's also great, completely fine. You can give us a heads up, send it to trinitycoms at duke.edu, just saying, I wrote this, can you check that it all looks good? And we can give you a few pointers, fix a few things if they need to be fixed. And then you can be sure that whatever you're putting on the website looks absolutely perfect. So that's also a way that we can help you, is looking at things that you have already written if you'd like to go that route. And now I'm done.
Thank you, Marie-Claire. So we're having okay, good. Yeah, so this is being recorded. We are going to be sending the recording to everyone on our site editor list, whether or not you registered, whether or not you've attended today. So if you're not here, you're going to get the recording. We will also share these slides, similar to the way we did last time. So both of those will be forthcoming. I will also say, if you have an idea or a topic that you would like us to cover in future sessions, please reach out, Trinity Web Support at duke.edu, and we'll get that on the list. Like I said, Haley, she was the mastermind behind these training sessions, and we've got a pretty good agenda laid out for the next couple of months. But I think we're going to be continuing this in her honor. So
Sorry, I masterminded them and then left.
yeah, right. So we can keep working on this. So yeah, if there's things that you would like us to go into greater depth on, or if there's something that you would like to see again, always reach out and we'll because the plan is to keep these going even after Haley leaves. So thank you all again. If there's no other
Yeah,
questions, we'll give you some time back for your day.
yeah. It's been wonderful working with you all. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.